Kakbhushundi settled down under the banyan tree, closed his eyes, and invoked Sri Ram, praying for special grace. He was about to begin the second canto of the story, called Ayodhya Kand. This canto has many emotional highs and lows, which make it very challenging for the narrator to retain his composure, hence the prayer for special blessings. Then he began his story. One day, Raja Dashrath was seated on his throne when he suddenly felt that his crown was a little crooked. So, going to a mirror to straighten it, he noticed that the hair around his ears had begun to turn grey. It was as if old age was whispering into his ear that he was advancing in age, that it was time to pass the reins of the kingdom to Ram. Raja Dashrath naturally consulted his guru, Rishi Vashisht. The Rishi thought that it was a good idea to make Ram the Yuvraj, the crown prince. Preparations got underway for this important event, and there was rejoicing all around. The evening before the ceremony, Guru Vashisht instructed Ram on all that he had to do to prepare for this auspicious occasion. He was to fast, sleep on the floor, and observe other such austerities. These were to remind the future king of the sacred duty of a ruler, that he must be ready to make all kinds of sacrifices for the good of his people, and that he should not ever think of his own comfort and pleasure. Ram did all this quite happily, but there was just one thing that made him sad, that the throne of Ayodhya would only come to him simply because he had been born a little earlier than his brothers. He would have liked all four of them to rule because they had always done everything together. There was never any selfishness in Sri Ram. What added to his sadness was that Bharat and Shatrughan were away at that time, visiting Bharat's maternal grandparents. Now, while everyone in Ayodhya was celebrating, the Devtas in Swargalok were most unhappy. When they learned that Ram was to be made Yuvraj the next day, they immediately called for a meeting, and it was unanimously decided that such a thing should not be allowed to happen. After all, Ravan was a constant source of harassment to them, and Ram, they believed, had taken avatar precisely to kill him and the other Rakshasas. If Ram was to become Yuvraj the next day, he would then not stir from Ayodhya. And if that happened, how would he accomplish all that he had come for? The Devtas called upon Saraswati Devi to help them prevent this ceremony for Ram. Instead, they wanted her to make sure that he would be compelled to leave the kingdom for the forest. At first, Saraswati Devi was not inclined to help. But then it struck her that even though the suggestion appeared an evil one at the moment, ultimately it would have the best possible outcome. Poets would one day describe the Leelas that Sri Ram would perform. Everyone would want to either write a Ramayana, listen to it, or even sing it. That way, the story of Sri Ram would spread far and wide. Saraswati Devi also recalled that Lord Vishnu had given his word to the Devtas that he would take avatar in the solar dynasty and that he would destroy Ravan. Thus, Saraswati Devi decided to help the Devtas. She arrived in Ayodhya, wondering whose mind to poison, and then she spotted Manthara, the hunchbacked maid of Kaikeyi. Manthara had been in Kaikeyi's service even prior to the queen's marriage. She was utterly devoted to her mistress, and Saraswati Devi decided to warp her mind. Kakbushundi saw the horrified expressions of his audience and hastened to explain. The important point to note, he said, is that one can only distort a mind that is already predisposed to evil. A virtuous person does not lose his virtue even if he finds himself in bad company. Manthara stepped out of Kaikeyi's palace in the evening and noticed that everything was being beautifully decorated and that an air of great festivity prevailed. When she learned that Ram was to be appointed Yuvraj the next day, her heart burned with ill will. She wondered how she could put a spoke in the wheel and prevent that from happening. Then she rushed to Kaikeyi, the mother of Bharat, and burst into tears. She wept so copiously that Kaikeyi grew impatient, wanting to know what had happened. Manthara announced that the king had decided to make Ram the Yuvraj. At first, Kaikeyi was delighted to hear this news because she loved Ram very much. Besides, he was the firstborn son, and as per the tradition in the Solar dynasty, the eldest son always became the king. But Manthara scolded Kaikeyi for being so blind, for being so ignorant of all that was going on. She harped on the fact that the king had chosen to perform this ceremony while Bharat was far away. He had done this without consulting her, even though she was the favorite queen. And now Kausalya would become the queen mother, and she, Kaikeyi, would be reduced to the status of a maidservant of Kausalya. Worse still, Kaikeyi's son Bharat would be put in prison, while Lakshman would become a minister. Kaikeyi did not have a strong, clear mind, and therefore she got swayed by Manthara. So, said Kakbushundi, looking piercingly at his audience, what is the moral of the story? Not to listen to anyone who talks ill of others, tweeted a spirited sparrow. Yes, nodded Kakbushundi. The moral of the story is that whenever anyone around us starts talking ill of someone, we should shut him or her up immediately or walk away. Kaikeyi was at fault because she encouraged her maid to speak. It was now getting dark, and Kakbushundi concluded the story session for the day. The birds flew off in a somber mood, for a heart-rending episode would follow in the next session.